Hey everybody, it's Reckless. So, a little bit earlier today, the 2.1.0 patch came out, which is that huge patch for December, and I will attest to it, it was huge. It was literally 18.813 gigs of freaking change. So yeah, we're going to get into the patch notes. I'm actually going to read off the Bungie website, all the patch notes that actually came out in this update. If you would like, I'll put a link in the description below. That way you can follow along yourself or just go there and read it. Now, all of the footage you're going to see is all of the visual changes that have been done in the patch. And also, towards the end of this video is my very first 2 Sparrow Racing League competitions that I have done. And I will tell you guys, it was fucking awesome. So without further ado, let's get on with all these wonderful updates. Now, primarily one of the biggest ones is the announcement of the Sparrow Racing League. The Sparrow Racing League is a live event in the tower until December 29th, and I will say that again, December 29th. In order to start this, talk to Amanda Holiday, and she will give you a quest, and you can pick up some bounties from her. Also, when you actually race, you will be able to unlock new SRL rewards. Now, when you first get into the tower, do not forget to check out the Eververse Trading Company, because Tess Eververse definitely has a couple of new things for you guys, if in the event that you actually want to spend silver. The next thing we're actually going to go about is the classes. Now, the only classes that actually got any type of changes is the Titan class, and for the subclasses, the Sunbreaker, Striker, and Defender have a couple little bit changes to them. Now first, Bungie fixed some issues where the players could sometimes get stuck in a slow sprint speed, and that's pretty much all classes because a lot of us actually have that issue. And then players can now use charged melee attacks while tethered by Hunter's Shadow Shot ability, which definitely would help out a little bit more. Now, let's talk about the Titan class. Every Titan subclass, which includes the Sunbreaker, the Striker, and the Defender Titans, all of them have their melee extended up into 12.5%. Specifically for the Sunbreaker, because we're going to start with that one first, the Sunstrike dot damage has been decreased from 6.5 seconds to 5.5 seconds. So they actually just lose 1 second. And even though it's just 1 second, that's 1 second extra for you to live. So Hammer of Soul has 3 changes. Thank you, God. And the first one is they reduce damage resistance during super by negative 9.09%. They slowed hammer travel speed by negative 1.32%. And also they have reduced the ability to create never-ending chain of explosions. And just as the emote's doing, thank you, Bungie. Thank you. Thank you. Next is Forge Master, and they reduce splash damage detonation radius multiplier by negative 20%. Flame Seeker actually has 2 changes. The first being turn down hammering tracking bonus by negative 25%. And also they removed +1 recovery and +1 agility stat bonuses. No idea why that just little +1 makes a difference. But anyways, moving on. Fleet Fire has a change. They added +1 agility stat. And then they also added +1 recovery stat to Firekeeper. And now everyone's favorite, Cauterize, definitely has a change. They added a cooldown to Cauterize from no time to 3 seconds. Now, before we actually move on to the Striker and Defender, there has been one more change to all 3 classes, and that is the Titan's Jump Catapult Lift. They gave it a +5% faster initial velocity. Next class we're going to go over is the Striker Titan. Now, there was a change to Stormfist where they increased base damage by 18.2%. Overload now also provides faster melee recharge by 50%. Discharge actually has two changes. The first one was an additional damage by 7.69%. And the second change was they changed the AoE of Discharge to a sphere shape. And the last change for the Striker Melee, Amplify now has a 30% increase super energy bonus. Now for the Striker passive abilities, Headstrong now also provides faster sprint, which is awesome. Transfusion has improved cooldown from 5 seconds to 2 seconds. Unstoppable has two changes. The first one being it now provides a +2 armor and +1 additional, and also increased damage resistance by 25%. Now, Juggernaut also has two different changes. They improved shield health by 14.3%, and Juggernaut now, for the second change, works while airborne, which is definitely pretty good. You know, I haven't played with my Striker in a while, but I think I'll go back to it, especially now that the wonderful exotic chest piece, the Armamentarium, is back. Now, the last class I'm actually going to go over is the Defender Titan, and this, my friends, is amazing. They changed the Word of Dawn, where after you cast your super, you recharge grenade and melee abilities. Now, whether that's a full recharge, not sure, but I think that is exactly what it is. The next part of the update we're actually going to go over is the weapons, and we're going to start with the auto rifles. Auto rifles have a small increase to base damage. Low rate of fire will be giving a 3% increase to base damage. Medium rate of fire will be given a 7% increase to base damage, and high rate of fire will be given a 4% increase to base damage. The next weapon on the list are pulse rifles, and they will be getting reduced base damage. The low rate of fire will be getting a reduced of 9%. The medium rate of fire will be getting a reduction in 8%. The high rate of fire will be given a reduction in 8%, and the highest rate of fire will be given a reduction of 2%. They will also be reducing damage fall-offs to start between auto rifle and hand cannon ranges. So, a low-range pulse rifle will have shorter damage fall-off than an average hand cannon. A high-range pulse rifle will have a farther damage fall-off than an average hand cannon. And also, they increased base damage against AI combatants, but roughly 5%, which probably roughly would mean 4.8, 4.9% or something like that. Hand cannons were given increased aim down sight accuracy for more reliable shooting at close to medium range. And that's all about hand cannons. There's really nothing else. Now, shotguns. Our wonderful favorite shotguns. My favorite shotguns are getting a nerf. Shotguns have a reduced damage fall-off to start at melee lunge ranges. Low range fall-off starts at standard melee lunge. High range fall-off starts at blink strike lunge. Final damage fall-off extends 0.5 meters longer for a smoother drop. Slower ready and put away time for all shotguns. Additional recoil on weapon fire for all stability values. Slower reload speed for all reload stat values. Slower time to aim down sights or ADS speed for all shotguns. Slower movement speed when shotgun is held. Walk and aim down sight movement is unaffected, and also sprint is unaffected. They had added 2 frame delays when firing out of sprint. They had increased base damage against AI combatants by roughly, again, 5%, but nobody really cares about that. And they also fixed the knee pad perk on HUGEEE shotguns. So what does this actually mean to us? Well, it means, hey community, fuck you. Because people keep complaining about shotguns being so OP, because people, don't know how to use shotguns. I'm sorry. Well, I can't help it that we're good with it and you guys suck. I'm just sorry. But anyways, moving on. My whole thing with that is they trying to get fusion rifles to actually come up in this whole wonderful new meta for December, but we'll see what happens. Also, by doing that, you just gave sniper rifles even more reason to be around, and people are gonna hate that so much. So if you're gonna take my shotguns away, well, looks like I'm gonna start learning how to be a sniper. If I see somebody come at me with a fusion rifle, guess what? I'm gonna snipe the shit out of them. Plain and simple. Well, speaking about fusion rifles, changes for fusion rifles are as thus. They have increased charge speed on fast charging fusion rifles, and they reduced burst damage to compensate for that. Fusion rifles have more predictably based on player state. Reduced hipfire stability for all fusion rifles, increased aim down sights or ADS, and crouch stability for all fusion rifles. A reduction in carried inventory for all fusion rifles. I want to say how much ammo you can actually carry. And they gave fusion rifles a 10% increase to PvE damage bonus to offset. Whatever that means. My new best friend, the wonderful sniper rifles, in the event that shotguns still can't be used as well. So, sniper rifles now have extended sniper rifle damage fall off, so damage only reduces on every long range shot. Also, Luck in the Chamber on Omalon sniper rifles now only buffs precision damage, which the Irene kind of, I guess, got hit with that a little bit, but if you obviously, constantly do headshots, then it doesn't really matter. Next, we have sidearms and swords. So, sidearms have increased ready speed for all sidearms, and for the swords, Arc and Void Sword Guard abilities can now survive a single hammer assault. My whole question is, what about solar swords? What, do you guys just gonna leave them out, or do they already, survive hammer assault? Not too sure about that. But anyways, moving on. The next thing we're actually going to talk about is the exotics. And for the first exotic we're actually going to talk about is the First Curse. Now, the First Curse perk now refills the magazine when activated, provides better stability, better target acquisition, and damage fall off starts further out while the perk remains active. The First Curse has a plus 25 to First Curse base range. They fixed the bug where the First Curse perk would deactivate if the player summoned their ghost, and also boost to Imprecaution, base range, and magazine size. I personally am not a First Curse person, so that doesn't really affect me much, but if you play with the First Curse, yeah, there's your First Curse thing, changes and stuff for it. Now, the one thing that I am actually heavily upset about is the changes done to the Hawkmoon. So, for the Hawkmoon, they had reduced the base range by 20. Now, if I'm correct, Hawkmoon only had a 38 on their base range. You just reduced it by 20. You just made it an 18. Now, come on, Bungie. You guys already nerfed the shit out of hand cannons by taking the range down. But now you're going specifically targeting the Hawkmoon. That's too much. Also, Lucky Bullets from Luck in the Chamber and Holding Aces now deal 1.2 times bonus damage, and it was 1.3 times. So you just nerfed, Lucky Bullets too. Jesus, man. God damn it. Well, the next exotic is the Chaperone, and they reduced the base damage, but in doing so, they also increased the precision damage scalar. Now, a kind of dramatic change for an exotic is the Dragon's Breath, which is obviously the next exotic we're going to talk about. They actually removed Pyromancer and Tripod perks, and they replaced it with Surplus and Who's Next. They also added a new perk to Dragon's Breath called Napalm, and that's where the rocket fires on a remote detonation. And so this is how it works. You hold the trigger to fire, and then you release the trigger to detonate. Detonation drops a solar damage napalm canister, which is, I definitely have to see how that works. They had also reduced projectile speed to help with the timing of the trigger release, and they also reduced detonation radius of initial rocket. They also reduced the magazine size to 1, but increased the inventory for how many rockets you can actually carry. The next exotic we're actually going to talk about is the Fabian Strategy, and for it, the Frontlines perk on the Fabian Strategy no longer buffs rate of fire as a bonus modifier. The Frontlines perk now increases the base rate of fire stat to highest speed. Damage per bullet is offset to match high rate of fire archetype. They removed the Extended Mags perk and replaced it with Flared Magwell. They removed Small Bore and replaced it with Rifled Barrel. And they also increased base reload and base stability on the weapon to help offset the benefits the removed stats upgraded were providing. Now the next exotic we're going to talk about is the Black Spindle. And for the Black Spindle, they removed scope upgrades from the Black Spindle talent grid, and apparently the Spindle only has one scope, and replaced it with barrel upgrades instead. So, the next gun we're actually going to talk about is the Super Good Advice. And they reduced chance that SGA, aka Super Good Advice, returns ammo on missed shots by 20%, but they also added a chance for Super Good Advice to pull inventory ammo into magazine on a landed shot. It's pretty interesting. It definitely makes Super Good Advice playable now. And the last exotic weapon we're actually going to talk about is the Sleeper Simulant. And they have maximized the inventory ammo from 7 to 9. The ammo swap exploit was removed, and the weapon no longer converts one ammo from a different heavy weapon to a full inventory. And the last change to the Sleeper Simulant is the inventory no longer benefits from fusion rifle armor perks, but it does benefit from heavy ammo armor perks. So the next update is actually pretty interesting because it's about armor. Now, Bungie hasn't done an armor like update in a while, but this one's actually pretty interesting. So the Exotic Collector's Edition class items, if you get them, for example, for the Warlock, it is the Stormcaller Bond that's an exotic, can now be infused, and they now have the Life Exotic perk, which allows you to use that exotic class item with other exotic pieces of armor. Bungie has fixed an issue where some rare leg armor was not granting its bonus ammo perks to certain exotics. And then the last thing is they fixed an issue where a Warlock helm no longer uses a leg armor talent grid. Now, I'm not even going to say that name of that helmet because I'm going to butcher the shit out of it. So I just rather not even do it. So the next thing we're actually going to talk about is exotic armor, starting with the Taikonaut. So the Taikonaut no longer turns off tracking for rocket launchers that have tracking. While wearing the ATS-8 Tarantula, arc damage reduction applies to vehicles. For the Acleophase Symbiote, the time you can have Golden Gun active is reduced. For the Nothing Manacles, they slightly turned down the tracking on the Scatter Grenade, which I don't understand why you touched the freaking Nothing Manacles. The Nothing Manacles were perfect as they were. Stop touching stuff that doesn't need to be fixed. Jesus. And for the No Backup Plans, the Shotgun Activating Force Barrier only works for Defender Titans now, which is pretty interesting. And lastly, the Skull of Dire Ahamkara has been added to the Exotic Blueprint Collection. Next up, we have our activities. And first is the Dreadnought. So, various chests around the Dreadnought will now grant Hadium Flakes instead of Worm Spore. And that's pretty much it. As for strikes, the Will of Crota has been added to the Vanguard Strike playlist and the Vanguard Heroic Strike playlist. And for the Nightfall now awards plus 500 Vanguard reputation on the first completion for each character. Some interesting news for the Crucible. You can now pop a 3 of coins and have a chance to get an exotic engram on a Crucible match that you win. But also, you can still pop a 3 of coins and kill an Ultra and still have that chance to get an exotic engram. So, let's talk about the Crucible playlist now. As for zone control, Scoreboard now sorts players based on advantage kills, which are kills when their team holds 2+ zones. Inferno Rumble now has the correct tooltip information. The Mercy rule no longer applies to the Rumble playlist. As for the Rumble playlist, it must now be entered as a solo player, so you can't go into Rumble as a group anymore. And also, Classic Rumble will continue to allow fire teams up to 3. As for bounties, the returning Victor weekly bounty has been removed from rotation, and they also fixed some issues where some bounties were not accurately reflecting the playlist/game type they must be completed in. I apologize for this taking so long. Bear with me. We are almost done. Now, for the maps. On Asylum, heavy ammo spawn locations have been moved away from the center of the map, and they also fixed an issue with a small hole in the environment. Never had the issue, so I don't know what they actually fixed. As for Black Shield, they adjusted Alpha Team's Rift spawn location to make it slightly easier for Bravo to score, which I guess, yeah, let's help out the other team. As for Crossroads, they fixed an issue where the teleporter would break for a player until they respawned. No idea what that means. I've never been through it. As for Frontier, they fixed some issues where players were able to get out of the environment. I've done that, and it wasn't on purpose. It was actually blinking, and I blinked out of the environment. It was kind of annoying, because obviously it killed me. On Memento, they fixed an issue where players were spawning in bad locations. Happens. They also fixed some issues where players were able to get out of the environment, and they also adjusted spawn locations for the Rift game mode. As for Pantheon, they fixed some issues where players were spawning in view of an enemy, which they should have fixed that for every single map. And for the Burning Shrine, they fixed some issues where players were able to get out of the environment. And they also fixed some issues where players were spawning in view of an enemy. Again, they should have fixed that for all maps. And for the last map, Vertigo, they fixed an issue where some players were able to perch in an unfair position on an interior wall. And they also fixed some issues where players were able to get out of the environment. Again, something where they needed to fix on every single map. So we only have 4 more things to go over, which are items, inventory, audio, and technical. For the items, Dead Orbit, Future War Cult, New Monarchy, and Eris now accept certain planetary materials in exchange for their respective faction reputation. Petravenge now accepts Etheric Light in exchange for her respective reputation. Year 1, Dead Orbit, Future War Cult, and New Monarchy ships may now be obtained from their respective faction reward packages. The Frontier Ghost Shell can now be infused, which is awesome. Next is the inventory. Discarding an exotic shard now takes longer button press time to prevent mistaken discards. As for the audio, they fixed an issue where all sound was too loud across the game. And as for technical, they fixed a rare crash on Xbox One during sign-on. So my friends, that is the entire December update for 2.1.0, the one with Sparrow Racing League. And it was definitely a long one to go through. But nevertheless, we made it, and now we can move on with life. So, let me know what you guys think about the video in the comments below. This is Reckless. I will see you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of the video, please, because this has an epic ending that I know you guys are going to love and appreciate. So, I will see you guys later.
Keep your helmet on. This ain't over yet.
I thought the point was to stay in the lead. Been practicing your quick getaways?
Watch out, they took your lead. You're first. Stay there.
Last lap. Show them what we can do.
They're outriding you. You're leading the pack.
I liked this better when we were in first place. This is a hostile planet. Are you sure you want to be in front?
I remember the old days when it was just a sparrow and a flat stretch of land. A lot different now.